Happy Friday, everybody. The end of May is upon us, and we've got a special edition of Seminole Sidelines here on this Wednesday afternoon. Florida State softball punching their tickets to OKC. It has felt like a birthright in Tallahassee to make it to the Women's College World Series, and especially, though, after the way last year ended, I know everybody is sky high and ready to make a run. I want to welcome you guys into the show. And we've got a couple of special guests joining us, none other than Alex Powers and Caylan Arnold, former Noles, and two players that have participated in the Women's College World Series. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Aria. We're excited to be here.
Yeah, super excited. Can't wait to talk some softball.
Let's get right into it. Want to just make sure fans, those of you watching on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, know that you can comment on the show, and we'll have Alex and Caylan answer some questions and interact with you guys. Those of you who want to listen to this in audio format, it'll be available on Apple and Spotify, and make sure to subscribe to theosceola.com. All right, gang. So big weekend in Tallahassee, right? The Dogs come into town feeling real good, pounded Virginia Tech. Their offense is rolling. 7 players are hitting 300. 5 have like double-digit home runs. And then, Caylan, we're going to start with you. The arms of the Noles were dynamite. It wasn't just Kat Sandercock. You had great pitching from Allie Dubois, from Kenny Reed, Mac Leonard. How about getting the nod, knowing about a couple hours before that she was just going to go out there? What did you see from Florida State and coaches' pitching staff to allow them to make OKC this weekend?
Right. Well, I think that, we've kind of seen a little bit of a glimpse of it all year long with Coach Alameda using multiple arms, using more of a staff, putting Kat in a different kind of role. She wasn't always that starter that she had been in previous seasons. She was taking on more of a closing role, a coming in when you're in a tough situation role. So I think that these pitchers were prepared for this type of a situation. And Mac is absolutely just like a beast. She's a warrior. And she's constantly, talking to Coach, trying to get better, trying to know what she needs to do to help the team. And so I wasn't surprised at all to see her. She's got the velo and she's got really great downspin. So I think she did fantastic. I think that Allie Dubois did fantastic. I knew that she was going to be huge this year with that nasty off-speed pitch. I'm obsessed with it. It is so good and it throws hitters off balance. And then obviously Kat is Kat. She's a leader and just an inspiration, I think, to a lot of pitchers. She is so gritty. And then McKenna Reed. I mean, she looks like a veteran coming in and just shutting down the Georgia offense. So it was really cool to see.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, Caylan mentioned the pitching by staff, and that's something that we've seen Florida State and Lonni do so much this season. But I think I was most surprised with the length of the outings and really just kind of the duration that each pitcher was able to go. We saw Mac Leonard go 5 1/3. Kat obviously doing some complete games the last couple of weekends, which has been a newer theme because Florida State has had so much success this season with that pitch by staff mentality. Some people only getting a couple batters, some people getting only a couple innings, but really going the distance the last couple of weekends in the postseason, because ultimately what we're trying to see right now is who's going to show up, who are they going to show up as, right? Everybody's young kind of on that team. Kat obviously at the helm as that senior leader, Mac Leonard as well, somebody that does a lot of things really well, but again, just kind of a different look than we've seen really throughout the season for Florida State, but that's why they're so good, because they adapt quickly and they can do a lot of things really well.
How big of an advantage do you think having a Kat Sandercock in the circle is for FSU? Not just obviously ability, right? Like she can pitch inside. She's got drop ball. She started to learn how to pitch up in the zone a little bit as well throughout her career. She's really become an all-around pitcher for FSU. But to have that experience that you have from Kat, who has already pitched in a Women's College World Series, leading the charge, do you think that can be an advantage for FSU in OKC this week?
I think 100%. I mean, having that experience, having that leadership, like I said, Kat's extremely gritty. Kat isn't only, a leader by example. Like she is a verbal leader. She is someone who is constantly talking to the younger girls and the other pitchers on staff and trying to help them. And then obviously leading by example by going out there and doing what she does, but then putting in the work behind the scenes. So she is someone who is constantly watching film, constantly, talking with Coach Alameda about different things that she can do to be better for this team. And I think that's what sets her apart. And I think that the rest of the pitchers on staff are extremely lucky to have her and to have that experience with her.
Yeah. And then I think just to tack on a little bit more, experience is the best teacher. And to get anywhere more often than not and to succeed there, you have to get there first, right? And I've talked about that a few times with some of the newer teams in the ACC, with Duke and Clemson being really good out of the gates with their program creation. But even now for Florida State, I know something when I was on the team, something that T. Will or Travis Wilson would always say is, hey, we've just got to get there first. Let's get there and let's learn how to compete on that stage, because it can be overwhelming. So when you have athletes like Kat who have that experience and that leadership, and Kaylee Mudge obviously had a great tournament a couple years ago at the World Series. And so they've been there and they know how to play there. And then they can kind of educate the younger ones that have not been on that stage yet, because it's overwhelming. There's 10,000 people around you, but then it's weirdly quiet, right? Like Caylan, I know you know that, like you're on the field and there's so many fans that love softball, but they love softball. And so sometimes they don't care who wins. And you just got to be able to kind of balance what that pressure and that atmosphere look and feel like.
Yeah, and I think too, just watching them this past weekend, the edge that they played with, and some coaches, guys, like they don't want to rehash the past, like they don't want to talk about Mississippi State. Lonni was like, let's talk about Mississippi State. She's like, we talked about Mississippi State a lot, and because if we're still talking about Mississippi State, it means that we're still playing. So I appreciate that you guys are still in this press conference. You guys have both been a part of crushing losses in your careers, things that kind of like reset the scale for you going into another offseason. What do you think that loss last year ultimately did for this group, who had basically set the world on fire last year in the regular season and had set records? What do you think that kind of did for them as they moved into 2023?
Losses hurt, especially big ones, and when you're upset or when you have a really big run differential, anything like that, they hurt. But again, experience is the best teacher. And when you know what that level of hurt and level of expectation feels like, good athletes and elite level athletes like Florida State has, and they've built the program to be, learn from it. They let it build them and grow them, because so much of us use those losses as that foundational piece, and so it's like, hey, I know how bad it feels. I don't ever want to feel that again. So every single day, even when I don't want to, I'm going to show up and I'm going to put the work in. I'm going to support my teammates and I'm going to do everything that I can so that I never have that kind of hurt anymore.
Yeah, I agree 100%. You never want to feel that kind of hurt again. And I think that, this Florida State team did have a lot of returners. So they had a lot of people who were there and experienced that. And so, like Alex said, they wanted to learn from it. They didn't want to experience that again. And, kind of speaking to that, in my experience at Florida State with COVID, like when we got kind of just shut down, like we really weren't in a great place as a team. We were trying to figure a lot of stuff out. And so we took advantage of that shutdown and said like, hey, like this is where we were. It's not where we want to be. And now we have a second chance to come back. And I think that's exactly what this team did. And now, we see that they've learned from it and taken all of those lessons and put them to work. And now they're going to the World Series.
Let's talk. We'll finishing touches on Georgia, and then we'll focus in on OKC. Offensively, Alex, it felt like, especially people were making a big buzz about the bats going quiet against South Carolina. They came out in a big way, right? It was clutch. It was timely. They jumped out in game 2 against Georgia to make sure the Dogs felt the pressure. Who were some catalysts, in your opinion, that kind of led to that? And who are some of the players that you think will have to step up in OKC for FSU moving forward?
Yeah, some that really pack a punch for me right now are Janai Kerr. She's been really good consistently throughout the season. I want to see her back get really hot in the next week or so, the next couple of days specifically. But you have Mac Leonard, obviously, kind of coming through in some big moments. I don't think her numbers are super consistent right now as maybe we know that they could be, but she's clutch and she's got that senior level experience, right? That's why she's really good. But then again, Kaylee Harding, I'm such a Kaylee Harding fan. And normally I tend to the lefties, right? Because that's what I was. But she's just flat out so good and so athletic. And then Def Flaherty having a really good postseason too. One of the stats in one of the games last weekend was, she was hitting over 500 in the postseason run between the regionals and the super regionals. And so she's just somebody that's really hot right now. So between Janai and between Kaylee Mudge too, this next couple of days, I want to see both of their bats get really hot because they're really fast on the base path too. And when they're going well, so is the rest of the team. So they can really be those spark plugs at the top of the lineup to get the Florida State offense set in a really good situation.
Yeah, going off of that, I'm a huge Kaylee Harding fan as well. She was somebody that, I had written down just because she's so clutch. And we actually talked about that year before at the World Series when I was there. Every time she came up to bat, we always felt confident because we're like, she's just clutch. She's a clutch hitter. She comes in and does big things in big situations. I go with also Devin Flaherty because I think even though Devin doesn't have the same power numbers that Kaylee Harding has, she is consistent. She's getting on base, and then she's stealing and she's getting in scoring position, and I absolutely love that. I think she's a huge competitor on the base path. And then I think Kaylee Mudge, leading things off. I think she is a phenomenal leadoff batter, and I think she really sets the tone for that offense. I think if we can get her, consistently like getting on base, like it's going to be difficult for opposing defenses.
Yeah, I agree with both of you. I mean, especially Mudge right now, you have to be damaging, I think, at the leadoff spot. You've got to be able to set the tone, and I felt like maybe against South Carolina and in that regional overall, once they got to Sunday, she was struggling a little bit to get on base, but she's unique, right? Like there's some pop in the bat leading off. It's not just a slap hitter. She can hit gap to gap. And it feels like she runs well too. So obviously at the top of the order, you've got someone putting pressure on opposing defenses. Good to see Harding come through clutch multiple times. Like your best players have to hit. Alex, you knew that when you went out to OKC. I think you had like 8 hits out there, a couple home runs. Your top bats have to hit. And you're going up against, the top dogs in the country, right? OU's dogs are going to hit. Everybody knows that they're going to be ready to play in front of their home crowd. Okie State's going to be playing in front of probably a largely Cowgirl crowd out there. That's going to be exciting for them. They're going to have their best players ready to rock. And I think FSU is going to have to channel that, and it's going to start with that experience. Flaherty's another one that it seems like she's just on a tear in the postseason. Regionals, she was phenomenal, had a couple more hits in supers. And, of course, her speed is a game changer. Like watching her run, sometimes turning second base into third, and then seeing who's peaking or who's not paying attention and getting to home is, I think, one of the joys of watching FSU play softball. That aggressive base running, do you guys think that's going to be a key for FSU, the way they put pressure on opposing defenses?
I think it has to be. They have power, of course. They're leading the country in doubles. I love that stat. Doubles was my thing for sure. Obviously have a lot of home runs too, but still, like, they're really good situationally. And so for Florida State to win, especially against those really good offenses, OU being at that top helm, leading in home runs, obviously 1 through 12, I think for OU could have double-digit home runs. Like, let's just be honest, right? And so Florida State's going to have to show up in that way because they're going to have to match these really potent offenses. We've seen it with Georgia, who had really big bats. Obviously our pitchers did really well in the circle too, shutting those big bats down for the most part, but still, like, just showing up in every facet of the game. Defense, one of the best in the country for Florida State. Obviously the arms in the circle, right? Really good. Base running, huge. And then the offense, the bats have to come up and come through in those big moments. And it's going to take everybody. The people that have been doing well all season long, the big bats, the Kaylee Hardings, the Michaela Enfields, who have been clutch in some really big moments, they have to show up in OKC. But then it's those people that are the first off the bench. It's the Waycasers. It's everybody that have to come through in big moments. And Hallie Waycaser has been somebody I've loved watching too, because she's just kind of like flies under the radar, but then is just so good in some of these moments that I'm just like, yeah, girl, fire me up. So again, it really does take the entire team and the whole village.
Yeah, going more specifically back on the base running aspect of it, I think that the base running is something that sets Florida State really apart from other teams. I know it's something that they drill constantly in practice. I was never a part of it because I was a pitcher only. But watching it, like, I loved watching how they drilled base running and how you can see it like play out in a game and just make the world of difference, being able to put that pressure on the defense and getting those extra bases, and being able to read the outfield and which way they're turning, and knowing that you're going to be able to get that extra base just because of that. And, the way they're going to throw it in their arms and things like that. It's so cool. And I think truly that is something that sets Florida State apart. And then just the speed of the players in general, like with Devin Flaherty and Kaylee Mudge. And then I love the combo of Michaela Edenfield getting on base and then Amaya Ross coming in to run for her. I think that's fantastic. And I love watching Amaya Ross run bases. I remember the first time I saw her get a triple on something that probably should have been closer to a single. It was fantastic. So I think that that's something that's really going to set them apart. And I mean, putting pressure on the defenses, every team that they play, it's going to be a challenge for them.
Caylan, defensively, what was it like as a pitcher to have your middle infielders, your corner infielders making the plays that, I mean, it was like everyone knows what Josie Muffley can do, right? Like she's on SportsCenter every other week, making another flash play. But Flaherty's been good at second, and Harding has really come a long way at third. You've got speed in the outfield. What's that like in the circle when all right, maybe if I make a mistake pitch, I still have them backing me up?
It's awesome because I got to play, with a lot of these girls, some in different positions. Kaylee Harding was in right field just because of her cannon of an arm. And then Kaylee Mudge was in left field and Danny Morgan was in center. And then, I still had Josie and Devin right there, middle infield, which was fantastic. And I had Sydney Sherrill at third and Elizabeth Mason at first. So it was a stellar defense. I couldn't ask for much better. But I'm so proud of Kaylee Harding and being able to shift from the outfield to third base, and honestly, just being a true utility player and being able to go like pretty much wherever they asked her to. Like when I played with her, she actually caught some, she plays some at first base. She's playing in the outfield. She can pretty much do anything. She's just a true athlete. And so I know that it gives the pitching staff a lot of confidence, because it gave me a lot of confidence having just a stellar defense like that, knowing that Josie and Devin are going to be there and just making these plays that like nobody else makes. Like people don't understand, I think, especially like fans who, really don't know the ins and outs, like the deep part of the game, like the shifts and how much of a difference that makes, and putting these players in the right positions, and knowing like that ball probably with any other defense would have gotten to the outfield, but because Josie was there or because Devin was there, it didn't. And it's so cool to see just play out in front of you.
Alex, what can defense change momentum going back into a dugout and spark the offense? I feel like at times for FSU, that has been the case this season.
Absolutely. Like you guys both mentioned, Josie Muffley, she's just an absolute game changer out there on the defense. Some of those really big plays where she's just flat out flashing leather, laying out, giving it all. People get that momentum. That fires people up because she just potentially saved runs, extra bases, whatever that was, right? And lessening the other opponents at bats. And with people like OU, it's huge. You want to get as little at bats to the plate as possible, so you can't give up those freebies. And, whether it's making great plays or the pitchers in the circle, limiting that, of course, too, like it all matters. And so absolutely, defense wins championships. And they say that all the time. Obviously, the offense has to show up to score some runs, but at the same time, defense, right? And that's something that, to Caylan's point earlier about base running, Florida State takes a lot of pride in their base running and their defense. And it's doing the fundamentals right. Again, building that foundation and then building it up so that everything else can then be really good. But you've got to be really good at the basic stuff, the monotonous stuff, the things that people often overlook because it's quote unquote easy, right? And it's not. And so often it's just a simple error, like throwing. It's a simple misstep with a ball that you're receiving at second base, trying to turn a double play. If you get ahead of yourself, it's those small things that can really then impact the rest of the game and the trajectory that you're ultimately looking to get.
Yeah, and I think that the reason I ask you that is it does feel like in OKC especially, those types of defensive plays make a difference. Like these games are one run all the time, and you never know what play it was that saved a run and or ignited the team to come back. And the momentum shifts in OKC. You guys both played. I did go out in 18. I was there covering for Seminoles.com, and I just remember when we're playing UW, right? We're playing Washington, and there were multiple defensive plays. Everyone always talks about Jesse Warren's play at third base, but it's just like there were other plays out there that ignited Florida State, and you kind of felt like it was heavyweights in a boxing ring, just so to speak, and you just never know what makes that difference. For fans who don't know, what's it like to play in the Women's College World Series? What are those first few innings like as you're trying to like gather your emotions and really lock in and play the sport that you've been playing your whole life?
Yeah, butterflies, right? Like it's just everything you've dreamed of as a kid. I remember in 2008 and 2009 watching the World Series on TV, and I was in ninth grade at the time. And I just remember looking at my parents saying, I want to do that. I want to be there. And, one of the jokes we had in my family was that some of the people on the field at the time, like, had really cool last names. And it was like, the announcers were doing puns in the broadcast. And so I was like, heck yeah, my name's Powers. They could have a lot of fun with that, right? And like, it was those small things that I remember when I was 12, 13 years old. And then, when I'm 18, 19, and then again when I'm 20, 21, getting on that stage, I just remember one at bat in the last game that we played in the World Series in 2016. The sun was setting. We were playing Auburn. It was an elimination game, so it was the semifinal game, and I was at bat in a bases loaded situation, and I just looked around me while, I took a pitch or whatever. I stepped out of the box and looked around me and just so grateful for the moment. I was like, wow, I'm so humbled and so appreciative to be here because I've worked so hard for this moment. So win or lose, whether I come through in this moment, whether I strike out, whatever that looks like, I worked hard and this is amazing. And I think that it's just that overwhelming feeling of gratitude and humbleness that you feel when you're the athlete playing in those games.
100%. I mean, we had very similar, experiences, because that's exactly what I felt as well. And I know that Coach Alameda, she took us out when we were going to practice one day, and before we started the practice, she made us just stop and just kind of look around, and she was like, just take it all in, be where your feet are, be so grateful to be here. Like, so many athletes, this is their dream and you're living it, and so I really want you to just kind of take this all in and just be happy to be here. And so that's what we did, and it was a surreal experience. And there's actually a picture of me when I was pitching against Alabama. And I run out to the mound, and I wanted to live what Coach Alameda had said. And so I just took a deep breath and like looked around, and I was just like, I don't even care. Like, I mean, obviously I care if we win, like, but it was at the same time, like, I cannot believe that I'm experiencing this. This is so amazing. I'm just so happy to be here and to be in this moment. And like, just, it was insane. Like, and then I had never pitched in front of that many people before. And like Alex said earlier, they're all just softball fans, they're all just living the dream, watching softball at the World Series. And I was so happy that we had that kind of turnout. It was amazing. And just can't even put it into words, honestly.
Alex, what are some keys for FSU out here? I know you're going to be out there covering with ACC Network. Very jealous of your opportunity. That'll be so cool. Can't wait to watch. But I'm sure you're going to talk about this on ACC Network. What does FSU have to do, not just to make a run and get to that finals and to the championship series, but to ultimately, like, everyone's playing to beat Oklahoma, right? Like, let's call it what it is. What's it going to take to get the job done and bring home some hardware?
Be themselves. And I know that sounds really simple and cliche, but that's the thing, right? Florida State, they're so good at everything we've talked about: base running, pitching, hitting. They're clutch, right? They're good at defense, so many things. So obviously you've got to play the game really well fundamentally, and you've got to come through in the big moments, the pressure-filled moments. But that's who they are. That's what they do. So they just need to stay themselves and show up every single pitch as that, because games happen fast. They slip away from us fast. And Aria, you asked about defense earlier, and I love that you didn't mention that in 2016, I think Florida State set the record for the most errors in a ball game, which we ended up losing that initial game against Georgia that weekend. And I think we only lost by 1 run. So we came back and we scored a lot of runs, right? But again, games slip away fast. And so it's really taking care of the ball and showing up as they are, because they're there for a reason. All these teams are there for a reason. But I truly feel that Florida State is fundamentally and all-encompassing the best team in every facet of the game. And so that's what they need to do, and that's how they need to play every single game that they get.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Oklahoma is become kind of just this like dynasty of softball, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, Oklahoma this and Oklahoma that. And yes, I mean, I'm not taking anything away from them. Patty Gasso has done a phenomenal job with that program and building it into what it is. But, like Alex said, I think that we just have to take everything one game at a time and focus on what's coming up next. So they have to beat Oklahoma State first. That's what they have to think about. And then going on to the next game and the next game, and not thinking, okay, what's it going to take to beat Oklahoma in the championship game? Because you haven't even made it to the championship game. Like she said earlier, what, Travis Wilson had said, let's get there first. Let's focus on what's coming up next and what it's going to take to get there. And then once you get there, then it's just all about playing your game, playing the game of softball and not playing the jersey that you're facing, and not focusing so much on, the powerhouse of Oklahoma, thinking about Florida State softball and what's Florida State softball got to do to win this game.
Yeah. Caylan, if I recall correctly, you were part of the team. You guys wounded the Giant,
Yes.
and you were away, I want to say, in game 2.
Yeah.
It was right there. I know. I was watching at a Miller's Ale House.
Yeah.
Screaming at the bar.
Close. Yeah, we were so close. I mean, Danielle Watson pitched that first game and did amazing. I mean, she completely, shut down that offense, and our defense was just punching and punching and punching and keeping them, at bay, which is so hard to do with that offense. And it was just, I mean, we were not shocked, but kind of shocked, that we were, and honestly, I think that's kind of how that whole year kind of went, because, if you're looking at it based off of what Florida State has done in the past, we weren't the same team that Florida State, had kind of been. We weren't a power team, we were very much like grinding and gritty and just trying to punch runs any way that we could. And so we were like, oh my gosh, like, we just beat Oklahoma, and then we almost did it a second time. And I think, like you said, there was just, if one or two plays had gone a little differently, we would have, I think, come away with the win there, and that would have been absolutely insane. But yeah, it was, they're definitely, not unbeatable. And I think that's what people have to remember, is that, yes, they are fantastic in so many different aspects of the game, but they're not unbeatable. They're still softball players just like, us. And all we got to do is go up and give it our best shot.
I actually last night reran the replay on YouTube of your team beating LSU in Baton Rouge 2 years ago, just to hype me back up. And the momentum swings of that game, it was like we just wouldn't die. And I think that's like that's a coach trait for Florida State, like from when both of you have played. Like that team, like Florida State softball, you just can't put them away. For whatever reason, it just feels like you need more than 21 outs sometimes to get FSU fully down. And I commend both of you for establishing that culture. I've talked to Coach recently about both of you, and she was like, Alex came in and helped build the foundation, and Caylan was just what we needed in 2021. It felt like I needed that experience in OKC. And so congrats to both of you on great careers. I do want to quickly, we have probably about 5 minutes left before we need to sign off on this podcast today. Let's talk about the field. Are there 2 or 3 teams that you feel like, other than Florida State, are really dangerous? We're not talking Oklahoma. Anyone other than OU that you feel like could make a run at this thing?
I think Tennessee is really good. They've got some really standout players on that squad, but more than anything, I think Stanford, I've been really impressed with Stanford and how well they do and how well they play. They came in, they got that number 9 national seed, but they were number 3 in regard to RPI, and RPI is obviously strength of schedule and then success with that strength of schedule. And so they've won some really big games and showed up and shown out in some really big moments. And they're led by some young leadership as well on that squad. And so I think more than anything, I'm so impressed by them, and I'm excited to see how they come here and compete, because quite frankly, and historically speaking, they're not supposed to be here. They're really good. Don't get me wrong. They're really good, right? They've had great players come through that program and everything else, getting a really good outing this year from them with that number 9 national seed, number 3 RPI. But again, historically speaking, they've not been here much. And so more than anything, I'm ready just to see how they come up and just really show up the next couple of days.
I agree. I think both of those teams are very dangerous. Tennessee, with me, kind of having a little bit of experience there and still living in this area, I'm very familiar with that team and kind of what they're able to do. And their hitting staff is just insane. I mean, with Kiki Malloy, who honestly I think should have been in top 3 player of the year, at least. She's so good. She is so good. And then their pitching staff, Ashley Rogers and Peyton Goschel, like they have been just shutting down offenses as of all year long. And so I think they're going to be a very, very tough team. I'm very excited about Stanford. I'm a huge fan of Kennedy. I think she being only a freshman, like it's ridiculous that she's been able to accomplish what she's accomplished this year. So I'm very excited to see what they do. I'm also very excited to see what Utah does. I think that they've kind of been, against the odds type of team this year as well. And nobody, I don't think, expected them to be here. And I think they're hot right now. I think that they're, coming off of the Pac-12 win and now regionals and super regionals. So I'm really excited to see what Utah does.
Real quick, and we talk about some great players that come through programs, obviously Jess Mendoza at Stanford and whatnot. But even Utah, I think of Hannah Flippin because she's somebody to me that just like changed the game, right? Like it just clicks in my head. And she's somebody now played for Team USA, Olympian, really good professional career. It's like it only takes sometimes a couple players to get these teams on the map to then really build a program behind them of, hey, this person was really good and they did really well here. Maybe I can do that at that school. And that's, I think, too, what Florida State has done, right? Like when I was being recruited, I'm going to date myself and I'm not even that old, but it's like they were a top 25 program at the time. And now it's like they sit in top 5 consistently. And it's like it only takes a couple sometimes to really change that mindset.
Yeah, I mean, this stage is so cool because players become household names. And I think softball is growing, and we're going to end with that, actually, the growth of the sport. But I do still feel like for the national population, right, like areas that don't necessarily focus on softball throughout the regular season, those regions and geographic regions will focus in on the Women's College World Series. And it's cool to kind of see these players become stars. And I even go back to like women's college basketball where like Caitlin Clark kind of set the country on fire this year, right? And that's great for women's sports. And it can only happen when you're at the biggest stage. So OKC, no doubt the biggest stage. I think people are sleeping on Okie State a little bit. I think that team is really good. Kilfoyle, obviously, in the circle, started, I believe, she was at Alabama, wasn't she? She was in the SEC, yeah, and she's been good for them this year too. I think underrated because they're going to be playing pretty close to home, and that should be an advantage for them. So FSU's got their work cut out for them. It should be a lot of fun. I love that this particular 8 is very balanced regionally, right? Like you have Southeast, Midwest, West Coast, and you've got a couple from each. And that's kind of cool to me. Utah making some noise, I think, is great for the sport. Seems like a newer face, right? Kind of familiarize yourself with them this week. So the growth of the sport was what I wanted to end on. Over 4,000 people showed up at the Plex this weekend at Graf, and it was way more than that, right? Like circling around, just driving was a zoo. Getting to the park was a zoo. And all I could think about was this is great. And you had every athlete from every corner of Florida State, football, basketball, baseball, tennis. I mean, anybody who could be there was there. Mike Norvell. I mean, it was you whoever you want to name. It was a who's who to come watch this spectacle. And one of my friends actually wrote this article about how FSU softball is something that you really want to be a part of, right? Like not just as a player. If you're missing out as a fan, like we feel bad for you. Like this is what you need to be here and experience this. I don't know, Caylan, were you in attendance this weekend, Alex? I know you were busy a little bit doing your thing, but there was a buzz at the Plex that I have never felt before. And I've called some games there and I've been as a fan. It was like people are joking about Sid Sherrill, but it was like everybody was acting like Sid Sherrill. Always. Like people were going nuts. And all I could think about was they deserve this. Good for you guys. Lonni was just like looking around, taking it in. So let's start with Florida State specifically, what you've seen from the growth of this program from when you played, Alex, to when you played, Caylan, to where we are now. And macro, let's talk about it nationally. Where is this thing going as ESPN continues to invest into it, and as professionally people are investing into more leagues and more opportunities for women in the game?
The ceiling and everything is limitless, in my opinion, and it all starts with visibility. And ESPN has done a great job getting games online, right? Whether that's streamed, linear, whatever that looks like, over 3,000 production broadcasts done this season alone, like that's huge. And I think to become a fan, you've got to see it, right? Because until you see it, people don't know. So that's where it starts. But yeah, like you're seeing these universities, you're seeing the NCAA, everything invest back into softball now, right? Because it's fast. It's these girls are talented, these women are talented. And it's just like, that's where we're at right now on the stage. And when I played at Florida State in the beginning, especially, like we didn't even need tickets. You didn't have to have a ticket to get in the game. You could just walk right in, right? And I'm not even 10 years removed yet. So it's just a little crazy to me. And Caylan, I say it all the time, and I'm sure you feel similarly, but whether it's at the Clearwater tournament, whether it's in Tallahassee or some of these other events, it's like, man, it was way easier as a player because you were just like coddled and taken care of in regard to how you get there. And now it's like trying to fight the crowd, trying to fight everything that is the fan of softball is crazy in and of itself. It's like I'm taking shuttles, walking miles to get to where I need to go. And it's like, I'm here to work. So it's just funny. But at the same time, like the sport is growing and it is so fun to watch, and people that were previously or still, of course, baseball fans are now venturing into softball and investing into softball. And that's something too that I saw, especially through my transition while at Florida State, was we had boosters that were heavy into the baseball program, then kind of start to transition into softball. And it's like, then they became daily fans, right? And at our games all the time. And then traveling with the team too. So again, so much growth, so much exposure, and so much of that is really just a testament to visibility and then getting great athletes into the program. And when you start doing that, obviously we've seen some of the renovations at Joanne Graff Field. It's crazy, but that happens because it's a winning program. And Coacha and Joanne Graff before her and everybody that has been a player, has been a previous coach, has invested so much into that program to get it to where it is right now.
Definitely. I mean, like Alex said, I feel like it's grown so fast in just the last few years. And that's what is so cool to see, is just kind of like an explosion of softball. And, the renovations at the field, like without the players and the alumni and the coaches of the past, like none of those things would happen. Like, and Coach Alameda has done such a phenomenal job of creating those connections and really making it feel like a family atmosphere for those people. And then that's how, we get the cool stuff. So it has become really, really awesome on all levels and all facets of the game. And I like Alex said, I have friends and family members who had never watched softball before. And then once I got to that college stage, they started watching, and now they're huge softball fans. And it's so fun just to see, and going back to the exposure, just getting softball on TV, getting it out there, and having people watch and drawing people in. And that's how you get, this growth and the crowds and the cool stuff also. So I agree. It's been so cool to see, and I'm just excited to see where it continues to go.
Tony Baldwin, the head coach of Georgia, in the press conference on, I want to say it was game 2, someone asked him, what was this atmosphere like being a part of it? And he has been some crazy ones, right? In the SEC, where they've been caring about softball, and that infrastructure has been there for a little bit longer, right, than the rest of the country. And he said, this is what little girls will watch on TV and dream about and say, I want to be a part of that. Not just a testament to FSU. You guys both know how rabid our fan base is about all sports. It's softball, it's football. You play FSU sports, we'll find you and we'll show up. But I thought it was really cool to hear an SEC coach kind of talk about, this is really intimidating, but it's also great for the sport as a whole. And this thing is going to blow up, y'all. Like, it's already getting there. I think we're getting close to over 1 million people watching a broadcast on ESPN. I think we've got a couple of games on ABC, if I'm not mistaken, this week. And that's huge, right? When you go from cable network to what they call one of the big 4 channels that you don't need cable to watch. And naturally that means more ratings, right? More eyes. That's really cool. And I just hope, we take advantage of it, because this sport is fun. It's really watchable. And I think it's great for women's sports, right? Like, I think that's something that we're starting to see this wave. So want to ask you guys both before we say goodbye, what are you guys both up to these days? Update Florida State fans on where they can find you going forward.
Yeah, you can find me on mainly not Twitter as much. I have a Twitter, just not super engaged on it, but Instagram for sure at Alex Powers. You can find me there. And then, yeah, I work at USSSA, which is a youth sports company, and I do softball broadcasts all season long for Florida State, UCF, South Florida, a bunch of schools. Like to do baseball and softball. So trying to get myself acclimated there. A lot of fun. I love talking the game. So that's kind of my way now to stay in it.
I am very active on Twitter. I tweet multiple times a day. I love Twitter. So you can find me very active on Twitter. I'm also on Instagram and TikTok. Still learning kind of about the TikTok. They're not great. They're not high quality videos, but they're there. So I'm working on it, learning. And then I also do softball and baseball broadcasting, softball for Florida State and North Carolina, and then baseball for Tennessee. So, and then I'm also playing this summer with the Florida Vibe.
That is awesome. Well, best of luck to both of you in your endeavors, and it'll be cool to see you guys continuing to do well. Hopefully you'll join us again on Seminole Sidelines as analysts, and we appreciated you guys being on this show. Those of you watching right now, look on your screen. That's when you can watch the next Florida State softball game. Thursday night, that's tomorrow, June 1st, and it'll be on ESPN. Noles, Cowgirls, they've already played this year. What a series that was in Stillwater. Coach always has a method to her madness, and so she has found a way to already play multiple teams in this field, and so they'll be prepared, I think, for the environment. Anyway, great job. Our next show will be Friday. Those of you watching, and 12:30. I think it'll be a Florida State football recruiting show with Pat Burnham and Charles Fishbein. So we will be also available on Spotify and Apple as soon as this live stream ends. And until we talk to you again, that's Alex Powers and Caylan Arnold, Amario Masudi, and this has been Seminole Sidelines.